What is up, everybody? Welcome to another World Cup recap here on Touchline Talk. Really excited to get into this today. Two very interesting games to talk about. Before I do, though, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you scan that QR code on the screen next to me, that will take you to my Substack page where you can find all of my written work and become a subscriber there as well. So all of that goes directly to your inbox. Two very interesting games for two very different reasons, starting with Morocco's penalty shootout win over Spain. The comparisons to what happened against Russia in 2018 are obvious, and for the most part, they are accurate. It was the exact same problem for Spain. It was my big question heading into the tournament. Can they actually make the possession count for something? And this game, just like that Russia game, was a whole lot of passing the ball sideways, backwards, maybe a little bit forwards, without doing anything that actually leads to some kind of goal scoring opportunity. Except, if you go back and actually sort of look at the stats, Spain were actually significantly worse in this game, both offensively and defensively. Morocco had more shots on target. And they did a better job creating chances. Now, they didn't create that many, but they did a better job creating chances against Russia, too. They let Morocco have, Morocco could have won this game. But granted, they didn't have that many good chances, but they created a couple. And so it was just a bunch of passes that led to nothing. And it was even worse than Russia, if you actually go back and look at the numbers. And Nico Williams, Ansu Fati came in. Spain were better in extra time. They started to actually make some things happen, get some runners in behind that at least forced Morocco to do something defensively. But it was nowhere near enough. And the big problem that I was really thinking about watching this game, with the way Spain and the way Manchester City play, because obviously it's coming from the same foundation, is when you dominate possession and you are so focused on having the ball, but you don't do anything with it, it doesn't give you an opportunity to create a goal a different way outside of set pieces and things like that, which, Spain had a couple looks that were pretty decent off of set pieces too. But from the run of play, there is no other way to score because the ball is sitting near midfield in your possession with a bunch of short passes. You're not going to turn it over the entire game. And you compare that to, for example, Brazil. Of course, Brazil are also going to dominate possession. It's not like they are dramatically different in the way they play. But the important difference is Brazil's willing to try stuff. Brazil is going to lose the ball sometimes, which then gives Brazil an opportunity to do things like set up a press, force turnovers, get Vinicius out in transition, isolate Neymar on the wing, whatever it might be. Brazil can just break you down the same way Spain can. You saw that with what they did in their game. But they also have different things that can happen because they're willing to take risks. They're willing to go vertical and more direct at times. They're willing to let their wingers try things. That is obviously right in the Brazil DNA. There was none of that from Spain because that's not how Spain play. And so you have to be able to break a team down. Otherwise, it looks awful. And you even see this with Manchester City sometimes, as good as they are. Right? There aren't a lot of games where Manchester City fail to score and you end up going, you know what? They were actually pretty good and just incredibly unlucky not to score. I feel like when they do fail to score, a lot of times it's more of, they just weren't very good and didn't create very much. They just kind of sat there with the ball and didn't do anything. So that was my big concern for this Spain team heading into this tournament. And it looked, heading into this game, like that wasn't going to be a major issue. However, you look at the teams they played, specifically defensively, and they have some very obvious flaws, particularly Germany. And so I don't see a way in which Spain get back to being a team that can actually win a major tournament, be it a Euros or especially a World Cup until they figure this out. Because it's great you can go score 5 goals sometimes and score 7 goals sometimes. Knockout tournaments are about consistency and about being able to adjust. And if this game, everybody knows this game is out there, you just can't. You're at least giving yourself a 40% chance of losing this game. So you got to find a way to avoid it altogether. Maybe they can, okay, if this is the one time it happens and they win the penalty shootout, then maybe they can get through. But that's asking an incredible amount of things to go right. This to me is just not a formula that can result in where Spain want to be. Now, they're not going to change the way they play. I mean, it's embedded into Spanish DNA. That's not what I'm suggesting either. What I'm saying is you got to be able to do what the 2010 team did and win a bunch of games 1-0. You got to find a way to score the goal. Because until it's a phenomenal way to play when you're up a goal, because it gives you so much control. You don't lose the ball. Teams get real frustrated because they're just chasing it around and can't get possession back. It just looks terrible if you don't actually score the goal, if you don't have those incisive passes, if you can't create anything. So you've got to find a way to balance this out a little bit and save some of your goals for this game. Instead of scoring 5 when it works perfectly and looking this bad when it doesn't go well. I will never buy into teams that are this inconsistent and this unreliable from game to game, particularly in the knockout stages. And on the Morocco side of this, just a couple things I want to mention. First of all, continuing to be impressed with this Moroccan defense. That's a good back line. I mean, that's, a guy that is playing in the Premier League, a guy that used to play in the Premier League, a guy who's played for Borussia Dortmund, Real Madrid, and PSG, and a guy that's made Champions League runs with Ajax and is now playing for Bayern Munich back there. And a goalkeeper who plays in La Liga. That's a really good back line. And of course, they're also going to cede some possession. They're going to be built sort of conservatively and trying to play defense first. But they're doing it. They've been as good defensively as any team in this tournament, maybe outside of Brazil. And so you give yourself a chance when you're able to do that, when you don't have to go chase a goal, because they've also been really, really, really bad in attack, relatively speaking, to everybody else. They just don't create that many chances. But to their credit, they have scored just enough goals and taken just enough of their chances to put themselves in this position. You got the goals you needed to win your group. Then you find a way to hold Spain without a goal, get to a penalty shootout, and Achraf Hakimi wins it with a Panenka against the country of his birth, which is the other thing I do want to talk really quickly about with this Morocco team. I mentioned this when they won the group, this idea that managerial change is looking better and better and better, and it was always justifiable to me because this team just didn't seem cohesive. They didn't seem together. And they look so much better at this tournament. This is, now I didn't expect them to be quite this good, but there are really good players on this team. One of the challenges, and it's a similar problem the U.S. faces, you just have so many guys coming from so many different backgrounds that make up the player pool for the Moroccan men's national team, that I do feel like it is one of the harder, these North African countries, because you've got guys, Hakimi, right, born in Spain. You've got guys coming from France. Of course, you have people who are also born in Morocco. You've just got guys coming from all over. And this is not about questioning their allegiance to Morocco or anything like that. It's just they're coming from different backgrounds. You don't have guys who grew up playing in academies and playing against each other like in England does for the most part, right? All those guys more or less grew up knowing each other because they're all coming from the same 5, 6, 7 academies pretty much, or at least, and they're playing against each other every single week in the Premier League. That's just not the way that the Moroccan team or the U.S. team, with all of the dual nationals, the guys born in other countries on military bases, that kind of stuff. It just makes it more difficult when you don't have a lot of time to get that kind of cohesion. And Morocco have found it. That's a credit to Walid Regragui. That's a credit to these players. The decision to change managers right before the tournament when it clearly wasn't working. And so here they are in the quarterfinals. It's a phenomenal story. They have been really good. And so I didn't want to just make this about Spain because Morocco deserve an immense amount of credit too. And they have enough in attack that if they can hold you defensively and you make one mistake, I mean, they nearly got a goal out of it from this game. Whether it's Ziyech, whether it's Hakimi, you can go down the list. They've got enough in attack. Buffon was really, really good in this game until he got taken off earlier than I would have liked. They've got enough that if you don't force them to really go for it in attack, they are set up to hit you on the counter, and they have been really, really impressive. So congratulations to Morocco. And then we get to what Portugal did to Switzerland. I'm not going to talk too much about this game in particular because, well, they won by 5 goals. There is something I need to get off my chest, though. This was an incredibly bold lineup selection from Fernando Santos. Not because he dropped Cristiano Ronaldo to the bench, but because he brought in Gonçalo Ramos, a guy who I think it's 36 minutes he had played for the Portuguese national team before this game, instead of Rafael Leao, and also kept João Cancelo on the bench. This was not about Ronaldo. This was about the fact that I will continue to say I believe Rafael Leao and João Cancelo are 2 of the 3 best players arguably at their position in the world. And Leao, I want to clarify very quickly, I mean pure winger playing next to a more traditional number 9. I don't really consider, for example, Kylian Mbappe, I mean, he certainly can play as a winger, but he has more freedom than that PSG system. There's no central sort of focal point in terms of a physical presence, right? He can kind of slip. They're all interchangeable. Messi's dropping deeper, and Mbappe and Neymar are kind of playing as number 9s. It's a little bit different. In terms of pure wingers, I mean, and outside of Mbappe, how many wingers are better than Rafael Leao in the world right now? This guy can't get in the starting lineup. And João Cancelo, for the most part over the past few seasons, has been considered the best left back in the world. And Santos didn't start either of them. And this is the result. Which gets to my bigger point, which is this team's depth, for some reason, I feel like just does not get appreciated the way it should. Gonçalo Ramos, who had a hat trick and an assist, probably was not going to make this squad until Diogo Jota got hurt. This is the same Gonçalo Ramos who is tearing it up for Benfica, the team that finished atop a Champions League group, including PSG. That guy, who is one of the best young strikers in the world, was right on the edge of even getting into this squad. And they put up 6 goals without, I mean, Leao came on at the end, but without really needing the reigning Serie A Player of the Year and Manchester City's starting left back. And instead of talking about all of that, we're continuing to talk about Ronaldo and whether it's a good decision or not to start him or to drop him from the lineup. And this is just an old story I'm tired of. Why would it be any different on the international level at this point when he's surrounded by, some of his former Manchester United teammates, guys who play for Manchester City, guys who play for AC Milan? You can go down the list. This team doesn't need Cristiano Ronaldo. Is it beneficial to have a guy who is so lethal in the air and such a clinical finisher? Sure. I'm not saying he should have been excluded from the squad completely. I'm just saying it's not surprising they look this good without him on the field. Because Gonçalo Ramos does a lot of things Cristiano Ronaldo cannot and will not do at this point in his career. This is one of, and I said this from the beginning, it's why I had him in my favorites, not my contenders, when I did my tier rankings for this World Cup. They are easily one of the 5 best teams in the world from a talent, player-by-player perspective. You can say France, Brazil, maybe England. After that, I've got them 4th, and maybe even above England. I'd have to really think about that. And particularly this England team without the depth at the outside back positions. But they are easily one of the 5 most talented teams in the world. and are more than capable of doing what they did in this game and winning this tournament. This has, at least for the past couple years, this performance has always been something this team is capable of. And I understand, Leao is just coming to the equation. Obviously, Ramos is just starting his international career. But Cancelo's been around for a while. Bruno Fernandes has been around for a while. John Moutinho, Rafael Guerrero, of course, Bernardo Silva. This is not the 2016 Portugal who were relying on, Nani and Ronaldo to carry the attack and hoping that they can just hold on defensively and get the goal and win a bunch of games 1-0. This is a team with as much attacking talent as just about anybody in the world. And in a remarkable amount of depth. That has been more conservative than they need to be under Fernando Santos. And finally, it seems like in this tournament, he has kind of unleashed them and let them play. I mean, just go look at their bench in this game. Even the guys who didn't come in or who came in when the game was over. They are this good and have been since you kind of got this second wave of players coming in. Ruben Diaz, Bruno Fernandes, now Leao. Jota also falls into that equation, is right. These guys kind of in their just at the reaching the point where they are world-class players at some of the biggest clubs in the world, but still early on in their careers where they've got 5+ really good years still ahead of them. So 2018, okay, those guys maybe weren't exactly what they are now, but starting from Euro 2020. It's not like this team is all that different from that one. And so I just needed to get that off my chest. I am tired of talking about Ronaldo as the story on this team because it's just... there is nothing else to say. He can score you some goals. There are real downsides to starting him when you have comparable or if not better options available. Whether that was starting Leao, Santos put himself on the line here with these decisions, and they all worked out, and so he looks like a genius now. So congratulations. I mean, Ramos was brilliant. It all worked out just fine, obviously. But we got to start talking about this team and not just Ronaldo. It's the exact same thing at Manchester United. Because this team is filled with world-class, and maybe, some of the best players in the world, just like Manchester United is. They don't need him. Can he help? Sure. But he needs them way more than they need him at this point. And so maybe this was just a rest thing where, you relied on him heavily in the group stage. You didn't feel like you were missing all that much by starting somebody else because they have plenty of quality replacements. Or maybe it's just a matchup thing and he comes back into the quarterfinals. I'm not fundamentally opposed to that. Would I be starting him? No. But we don't need to rehash this conversation that has clearly been decided based on exactly what happened at Manchester United, the numbers when he starts, when he doesn't, where he's at in his career, the way the game is played, where you need versatile players, you need guys who are going to run, who are going to do the defensive work, all that stuff. It is no different here. And I would argue it might be, okay, maybe it's not quite as important. I will revise that slightly. It's not quite as important on the international game because your system is not as specific. You don't have this sort of grand vision every single day of what you're trying to implement because you just don't have time. There is more value to having Ronaldo, and I think I did say this before the tournament, in an international setting when there's less cohesion. You're just trying to sort of put the pieces together as best you can, and Ronaldo can bail you out of situations and score goals that most other players in the world simply can't, even at this stage in his career. But to reach the full potential of this team, to me, he's not a starter in the best 11. And whether you feel like Ronaldo should start or not, can we please at least just get to the point where we start talking about Portugal and not Cristiano Ronaldo? Because the rest of this team deserves that conversation because they seem to have finally found a way to unlock this attack that has been kind of this sleeping giant that's been disappointing since it actually came to fruition. I know they won Euro 2016, but that was nowhere close to this Portugal team. And you look at the talent coming in the pipeline, they are just getting better and better and better. And so you're in this awkward phase where you're trying to still use Cristiano Ronaldo and capitalize on what he has to offer while also transitioning out because this team is just fine without him. Can we just please talk about the other players and talk about how good this team was in this game and how much of a chance you get the best setup for the quarterfinals? Not that Morocco is going to be easy, but you're avoiding France, you're avoiding England, you're avoiding Brazil, you're avoiding Argentina. And then you've got one game, if you can get past Morocco, one game against a France or an England, and you are in the World Cup final. We got to start talking about that part of this. Instead of just continuing to go, well, should Ronaldo start? Will Ronaldo start? How about we pay attention to the other world-class players on this team, at least a little bit, please. That is all for today's World Cup recap. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.